Good evening and welcome to Tucker Carlson. Tonight we just landed from Helsinki, back in the nation's capital where it is hot and intense. We're going to have our full extended interview with the president from Helsinki. We're going to show that to you in just a minute. We asked him, of course, about Russia, but there are, believe it or not, many more important and pressing issues on the world stage, not just Russia, and we asked the president about those as well. We'll bring the whole thing to you coming up in just a second. But first, tonight, with remarkable speed and intensity, the media, the foreign policy establishment, both political parties, have come together as one to attack the president for his meeting yesterday with the Russian president, Vladimir Putin. Anderson Cooper, John McCain, Mitt Romney, they all described the president's remarks about Russia as disgraceful. Former CIA Director John Brennan called those remarks treasonous and grounds for impeachment. Nancy Pelosi and Chuck Schumer announced that Trump was being blackmailed by a foreign power. Others accused him of being a sleeper agent, a spy. One member of Congress from Tennessee called for a military coup against the presidency. Well, as the rage storm swirled, the president bowed to the inevitable, genuflecting before U.S. intelligence agencies whose judgment must never be questioned, and recited the now obligatory oath of loyalty to the spy bureaucrats now in charge of our country. Watch.
In a key sentence in my remarks, I said the word would instead of wouldn't. The sentence should have been, I don't see any reason why I wouldn't, or why it wouldn't be Russia. So, just to repeat it, I said the word would instead of wouldn't, and the sentence should have been, and I thought it would be maybe a little bit unclear on the transcript or unclear on the actual video. The sentence should have been, I don't see any reason why it wouldn't be Russia. Sort of a double negative. So you can put that in, and I think that probably clarifies things pretty good by itself.
So that's the hostage tape. The president buckled to criticism. I don't know what they're saying. That's exactly what happened. He buckled. And that happens. This is politics, after all. What is amazing and unusual and ominous is who made him buckle. The people yelling the loudest about how the Russians are our greatest enemy and Trump is their puppet happen to be the very same people who have been mismanaging our foreign policy for the past 2 decades. The people who invaded Iraq and wouldn't admit it was a mistake. The people who killed Muammar Gaddafi for no obvious reason and prolonged the horrible Syrian civil war and then threw open the borders of Europe. The ones still defending the pointless Afghan conflict and even now planning brand new disasters around the world in Lebanon, Iran, and yes, in Russia. These are the people who've made America weaker and poorer and sadder. The group whose failures got Trump elected in the first place. You would think by this late date they would be discredited completely and unemployable, wearing uniforms and picking up trash by the side of a turnpike somewhere. But no, they're not. They're hosting cable news shows. They're holding high positions of influence at the State Department. They run virtually every nonprofit public policy institution in Washington. They are still, in some sense, in charge of our national conversation. And naturally, they hate the idea of rethinking or correcting any of the countless blunders they have made over the years. And that's one of the main reasons they hate Trump, because he calls them on those blunders. Now, being Trump, he can't always explain precisely what he means to say. Sometimes he gets the details wrong, or he gets sidetracked with some personal vendetta, as if anybody cares about that ridiculous Jim Acosta guy. Nobody does. But on the big questions, Trump is indisputably right. The Cold War is over. The world has changed. It is time to rethink America's alliances and to act in our own interest for once. Russia is not a close friend of the United States. But the question is, why should we consider Russia a mortal enemy? Of course Russia spies on us. So do a lot of countries, some of them far more effectively than Russia. The Russian attempt to meddle in our election was comically amateurish. Badly targeted Facebook ads almost nobody saw. Compare that effort to the deep penetration of American industry and the defense sector by the Communist government of China. Or compare it to the remarkable sway that the Sunni Gulf states have over our political process. Or the fact that Latin American countries are changing election outcomes here by forcing demographic change on this country at a rate that American voters consistently say they don't want. Those are all major challenges from foreign powers to our American democracy. They're real. And yet somehow nobody on cable news seems upset about any of it. Why is that? Well, here's one reason. Many in Washington are getting rich from the Chinese and the Saudis. Latin Americans clean their homes and watch their kids. Those countries can't be our enemies, in their view. But nobody here is getting rich from Russia, so therefore Putin must be a mortal foe. That's what the neocons are telling us we are required to believe. Does anyone actually believe it? Well, no sober person who's read a newspaper this year could recite that talking point without laughing, because it's stupid. So the only option, if you want to force the population to accept something ridiculous, is to make sure they don't think too much about it, that they're quiet, they do what they're told. And if you don't believe it, watch what's happening to Trump right now. Obviously, it's possible, entirely possible, maybe likely that the Russian government broke into the DNC servers before the last election. It certainly sounds like something they might do. But before we act like we know for a fact that that's what happened and go to war with Russia over that, shouldn't we see some actual evidence that it happened? Why not? Like maybe a server, or at least a clear explanation of what happened. We haven't seen that. And that's what Trump asked for. How dare he? That's a treasonous thought, we were told. He's a quisling, a traitor to his country. That's what they're saying. And not just a few of them. All of them are saying that in unison. Think for a second about what they are demanding. If you don't automatically accept the imprecise, nonspecific, never fully explained findings of shadowy intelligence agencies with long, documented track records of making serious mistakes, you've somehow betrayed your country. The very people who assured you that Iraq had weapons of mass destruction, the ones who said the Shah would never fall in Iran, etc., those people must be believed without question or else. On television, this group is called the intelligence community. That's an Orwellian name if there ever was one. Where exactly is this community we hear so much about? Does it have a zip code? A public library system? A youth football league? How long before Congress starts demanding unthinking obedience to the lawmaker community? It's a community, after all. You must obey it. Dissent is unpatriotic. And if you don't agree, you're working for Vladimir Putin. That's where we're heading, by the way, and fast. In some ways, this whole story is about Donald Trump and what he's said and what he does. But on a deeper level, it has nothing to do with Donald Trump. This is about democracy, whether or not voters rule their country. It turns out the very people telling you they are saving our democracy are working overtime to destroy it and scolding you as they do. Yesterday, we asked the president about this, along with many other issues. Tonight, we're running fewer commercials and airing our extended interview with the president. Here's part one of that conversation. Mr. President, thanks for doing this.
Thank you.
The reaction to your press conference in Washington was swift and intense. Former CIA Director John Brennan described it as treasonous and a potentially impeachable offense. Why the push toward conflict with Russia in Washington on both sides?
Well, I think Brennan's a very bad guy, and if you look at it, a lot of things happened under his watch. I think he's a very bad person. I also think that when you watch Peter Strzok and Lisa Page, when you watch all of the things that have happened, and Comey, you take a look at that, and McCabe, who's got some pretty big problems, I assume. You look at the deception, the lies, what's gone on in the last fairly long period of time before I won. I mean, long before I won, during the campaign, I guess probably during the Republican, when I was fighting against 17 other Republicans. So this has been going on for a long time, but these are people that, in my opinion, are truly, they're bad people. And they're being exposed for what they are. And it's a shame that it has to happen, but it's really hurt our country.
Their view is that the United States is forever in conflict with Russia, which is our chief global adversary, and anyone who doesn't believe that is betraying the United States. Without taking up whether that's true or not, why do you think there is this bipartisan consensus on that in Washington?
Well, it's sort of incredible because you look at World War I and World War II, that was Germany, and in World War II, Russia lost 50 million people and helped us win the war. And I was saying to myself the other day, I said, Russia really helped us. I'm not pro-Russia, pro-anybody. I just want to have this country be safe. I don't want nuclear weapons, even people thinking about it. Russia and the United States control 90% of the nuclear weapons in the world. And getting along with Russia, and not only for that reason, that's a good thing, not a bad thing.
Are they our chief adversary, would you say?
Well, they're strong military, but their economy is much smaller, as you know, than China. And I don't want to even use the word adversary. We can all work together. We can do great. Everybody can do well, and we can live in peace. But I think it's very, very important, and I've watched your show a lot, and I see how you're talking about the magnificent size of China. You look at the size of what they've done in a fairly short period of time. That's because of a lot of bad leadership on behalf of the United States. We allowed that to happen. We allowed them to make hundreds of billions of dollars. And right now, as you see, and you probably have noticed, that things are happening. We have to bring it more into line. We have to level the playing field between the United States and China. And we've increased our net worth. We've increased our worth by more than $7 trillion since the election. And we're about twice the size of China, our economy. But China still is a massive economy. They have the second biggest by far.
So NATO was created chiefly to prevent the Russians from invading Western Europe. I think you don't believe Western Europe's at risk of being invaded by Russia right now. So what is the purpose of NATO right now?
Well, that was the purpose. And it's okay. It's fine. But they have to pay. And they weren't paying. And other presidents went and they'd make a speech and then they'd leave and nothing would happen. And, the fact that they didn't pay is not, new. It's not a new fact. This is something that people have known for a long time. Other countries were delinquent. In the real estate business, we use the word delinquent. They didn't pay. They didn't pay for past. So I went there 3-4 days ago, and I said, folks, you got to pay. Because we're not going to pay from 70 to 90, and I think 90 is really the right, depending on the way you define it, 90%. We're not going to pay 90% of the cost to defend Europe. And on top of that, the European Union kills us on trade. We lost $151 billion last year on trade. They don't take our product. They don't take our farmers' beautiful goods. They don't take our cars. And if they do, the rate of tax is many times what we would charge them. We only charge them 2.5%. Their tariff is very substantially higher. I mean, in the case of China, we charge 2.5% when they send a car, and when we send a car into China, they charge us 25%. How is that fair trade? People say, oh, we don't want tariffs, but how is that fair when one country gets 25% and another country gets 2.5%? And by the way, the one getting 25 doesn't even want the cars. They want them to build those factories. They want those factories built in China. They want those factories built in Europe. So now we're doing things that have never been done before in this country, and you see what's going on. It's been very pleasant to watch.
So membership in NATO obligates the members to defend any other member that's attacked. So let's say Montenegro, which joined last year, is attacked. Why should my son go to Montenegro to defend it from attack? Why is that?
I understand what you're saying. I've asked the same question. Montenegro is a tiny country with very strong people.
Yeah, I'm not against Montenegro or Albania.
No, by the way, they're very strong people. They're very aggressive people. They may get aggressive, and congratulations, you're in World War III. Now, I understand that, but that's the way it was set up. Don't forget, I just got here a little more than a year and a half ago.
Right.
But I took over the conversation 3 or 4 days ago, and I said, you have to pay. You have to pay. And the Secretary General said that because of President Trump, last year we had an additional $44 billion, with a B, $billion raised for NATO. And this year it's going to be much more than that. And the countries all agreed. It was very unfair. They weren't paying. So we're not only are we paying for most of it, but they weren't even paying. And we're protecting them. Add that to your little equation on Montenegro.
As you traveled around Europe and looked at Europe over the years, can you think of a place that has been improved by mass immigration or the movements of large numbers of refugees?
Not one.
Not one.
And in fact, one of my big things, and some people were insulted. I'll tell you, a year ago they would have been totally insulted. Now maybe there could have been a couple out of all of those countries. I said the immigration policies in Europe are a disaster. You're destroying Europe. You're destroying the culture of Europe. The crime is up in those areas, and you better do something. I tell them that. I said, look, it's not me. It's not anything. You just look at the numbers. The numbers speak. But the culture is changing rapidly, and the crime rate is changing more than rapidly. You better do something. I told them that.
What are the lessons for us watching that?
Well, we have to be very strong on the border. Now, we're much stronger than we ever were on the border, and our numbers are much lower, but still, we're getting the wall. We're putting in for about $5 billion. We've already started the wall, $1.6 billion. It started in San Diego, California. It's almost completed in that area. And by the way, the people were really asking for it. It's interesting. They probably go down as, oh, we don't want the wall. But when it came to their backyard, they wanted that wall, and they wanted it up fast. But we've started the wall. We are going to continue with the wall. It's so necessary. But we have to have strong immigration policies. Our laws are so bad, Tucker. Somebody comes in, and they step on our land, and now we end up with a court case that takes 7 years, but the people never show up to court. It's so bad, and we have to do something about it. Like, if they come into our land, we have to say, I'm sorry, you have to leave. Not, I'm sorry, please come to court. We're going to put you in court. You'll come back in 3 years for your trial, and then they never show up. That's what's happening now. It's crazy.
Why do you think so many political and cultural leaders in the United States disagree with you and are making the case that borders are themselves immoral?
It's incredible. I mean, the Democrats are for open borders, which means crime. It's not a question of like, what do you think it means? Open borders means crime. And you look at MS-13 is pouring in, and we stop them better than anybody else could. But when they get through, and then we send ICE, because ICE is tougher than they are. And now I understand there's a big move to try and get rid of ICE. But MS-13, these are tough, vicious people. They don't like guns. They like using knives better because it's more painful. These are vicious people. And you know the story. You cover it plenty. And ICE goes in and they get them out. They get them out. They put them in jail or they throw them out of the country, and they don't even think about it. And now there's a move on to get rid of ICE because ICE is tough. If you don't have tough people doing that job, you're going to have crime like you've never seen it. So it is incredible. The Democrats want open borders, which is basically saying we want open borders, we want crime.
Why do you think they want that?
Maybe it's a political philosophy that they grew up with. Maybe they learned it at school. Maybe they're fools. I don't know.
We'll have part 2 of our exclusive extended interview with the President of the United States in just a minute. But first, Professor Stephen Cohen is one of the famous Russia experts, the eminent Russia experts in America. He's Professor Emeritus at NYU, was at Princeton for many years, now a contributing editor at The Nation magazine. And he joins us tonight for some perspective on this conversation about Russia. Professor, you have followed this country for 50 years and know many of its leaders personally. Give us a sense of what's at stake in this conversation about Russia for the United States.
For 75 years, the President of the United States, beginning with Roosevelt, has met the leader of the Kremlin. Beginning with Eisenhower in the atomic age, the main purpose was to avoid war with Russia. Right now, we are in a new Cold War, fraught with hot war from Ukraine to the Baltic region to Syria. President Trump did not have a choice. He had to go, as his predecessors did, to meet with the leader of the Kremlin, Putin. And he did. We don't know exactly what they decided. We will learn. But never, not only in my lifetime or history, has a president coming back from doing his duty to avoid war with Russia been greeted with this pornography passing as news analysis and commentary. He is literally being called traitorous, treasonous. And I don't know what we're going to do, because if we can't discuss the issue, how can we think about our policy? But there is a good piece of news, and I'll state it quickly. Ever since the Soviet Union ended, relations with Russia have gotten worse and worse, and now we are where we are. And we ask ourselves, why did that happen? Communism is gone, the Soviet Union is gone. And the answer here is always, it's an orthodoxy. It's biblical. You can't dissent from it without being accused of being pro-Kremlin. The answer is Russia's to blame. Putin's to blame. The United States has done nothing wrong. And now the President of the United States has said something absolutely heretical. He said it first in a tweet and then after the meeting with Putin. And it was very simple, but it was profoundly true. He said, we have bad relations today because both sides are to blame. And I think that's what underlies their fury at him, that he has become a heretic in the American policy system. He has challenged the fundamental axiom of American foreign policy for 25 years.
Well, and it's stupid. I mean, what's true in foreign relations is true in marriage. It's always a joint effort to screw something up. So quickly, it is true, actually, as you know. But
I'm not going there, no matter what you say.
Give us a sense, quickly, of the consequences of what's at stake here. I think for a lot of Americans, this is a political story, but it's also a geopolitical story. This is a country with a lot of weapons that sees the world very differently from us. So what are we playing with here?
All right, leave this Russiagate aside because I can't find a fact to support it. What President Trump has done, and in this regard, though I didn't vote for him, I say 3 cheers for President Trump. He has said, look, we are in a dangerous situation with Russia, and it's not just Russia that's to blame. We are to blame. We did wrong-headed things back in the 90s. and since. What we need to do, this is me speaking now, having acknowledged that, is have a discussion of where our policy toward Russia went wrong. First under Clinton, then under Bush, then under Obama. It is a fully bipartisan, but what Trump has given us, if the media would allow him, is an opportunity to rethink. And if you don't rethink, how do you get policy right? And if you don't get policy right, we are talking about war.
Yeah, well, this is a city like Seinfeld that refuses to learn anything, ever. Professor, thank you very much. It's great to see you. Up next, a Democratic lawmaker says the summit meeting yesterday between the president and Vladimir Putin was literally treason against this country. He joins us next to explain. Also, the president talked to us about a lot more. Some of what he said may be surprising. Our extended interview with him is just ahead. And so I have time for it. We'll be back in just 60 seconds. See you in a second.
I looked up the definition of treason as soon as people started saying this was treason, and indeed it is. It's just as serious to me as the Cuban Missile Crisis in terms of an attack or the 9/11 attack. The president is taking the side of the people who attacked us instead of trying to prevent a future attack. I would say that his performance today will live in infamy as much as the Pearl Harbor attack or Kristallnacht.
Imagine hosting that show and somebody says, this is really like Pearl Harbor or Kristallnacht. Wouldn't you say, what? But they didn't. Nothing is being held back in this conversation about Russia, this mass hysteria. Lost elections and policy changes are part of living in a democracy, but some, literally, in the Congress are rooting for a military government or a world war or both. Congressman Adam Smith is a Democrat who represents Washington. Yesterday, he released a statement describing Trump's remarks in Helsinki as, quote, treason. He joins us now to explain that. Congressman, thanks a lot for coming on. So you don't agree with the president's view of how the United States ought to approach Russia. That's a policy disagreement.
Yeah, no, that's
treason?
Fine. No, that's not. And let me just say, as I understand the law now, as I look at it, the president is the remedy for a crime by the president is impeachment. So treason is the wrong.
How is it a crime to disagree with you? And who's the fascist here?
Well, let me tell you what the crime is.
Okay.
The FBI just yesterday, not yesterday, a couple days ago now, indicted 12 high-ranking Russian officials for hacking into and influencing the U.S. election. Now, I know there's a lot of dispute on that here, but within,
I'm not disputing it. That
within
happened.
Our intelligence community, it absolutely happened. And the president of the United States has systematically tried to undermine the investigation to do that, leading right up to saying in front of the international community, basically siding with the hostile foreign power. We have a hostile foreign power who attacked.
Oh, so doubting the conclusions of the intel community is now treason. It's a crime to doubt what an intel agency says?
With the hostile foreign power that
to have opinions you don't like and to ask questions about the conclusions, the imprecise and never fully explained conclusions of an powerful American
They
intelligence
have been fully explained.
Really?
Yes.
They have.
Yes.
Because I've been following very carefully, and I have a lot of questions. Am I committing a crime in asking them?
Absolutely not. I'm going to need more than 10 seconds to explain this.
Okay.
So I will try.
Where's the crime?
The crime is basically that they hacked into our DNC server and other servers and did a whole bunch of other disinformation campaigns to try to influence our election. A foreign power tried to do that. That is clearly the crime. Also in this indictment, it shows that the 12 Russian operatives had regular contact with high-ranking Trump campaign officials.
But no, I'm sorry. My fault. I didn't clarify. What is the crime that the president committed in doubting the indictments? And these are indictments. This is not the product of a jury trial, right? These are charges. The crime, so by definition, they're not proven. So, but you're saying that if you doubt charges brought by the government against somebody, you're a criminal.
No, I'm saying that if you attempt to obstruct the investigation,
how is he attempting to obstruct it by doubting it on stage yesterday?
Well, he is siding with a foreign power.
So having the same opinion as Vladimir Putin on something is a crime?
Basically undermining the ability to do the investigation is.
How does it undermine by disagreeing or asking questions? So I was there yesterday in Helsinki, and Trump said, I didn't agree with everything Trump said. I agree with this. Where's the server? Exactly. Well, why didn't the FBI examine the server? I think that's a fair question. I don't know the answer to that question.
I do know the answer to that question.
Okay, but I don't. So does that make me a criminal for asking?
No. Not at all.
But you're saying the president is.
No, he's not a criminal for asking that question. He's not a criminal, period. He potentially has committed impeachable crimes.
Well, you said he committed treason in a statement.
And as I said, that was an overstatement, and I did not understand the term of art where treason is concerned.
Okay, but he committed a crime. I mean, whatever you call it, a high crime, a misdemeanor, you get impeached for a crime, as you know.
Yeah, high crime and misdemeanor.
Okay.
It actually doesn't have to be a crime.
Where's the crime? Why is it a crime? So what scares me about you is that as a lawmaker, you would even think that disagreement is a crime.
It is not. I do not think that at all.
But you said that it was.
No, I didn't. You said that I said that it was.
Okay,
I have not said that it was. What I have said consistently is what Trump did trying to get Comey to back off of Flynn, what Trump did in firing Comey, what Trump has done consistently calling this investigation a witch hunt and fake news, trying to
You're not allowed to call it, so you're not allowed to criticize the investigation. Are you allowed, am I allowed to criticize the FBI? Will you arrest me if I do? What if I think the FBI is going astray?
No, you can absolutely do that, but if you are the President of the United States and you take steps to undermine the investigation.
Why is it, wait, hold on, why is expressing your opinion undermining it? So, like, I wouldn't use the term witch hunt.
Well,
but
you skipped over a very important thing here.
You issued a statement after a public press conference yesterday where the president spoke on camera to the world, and there was something about what he said yesterday that you believe constitutes a crime. And that's a threat, I think, to all of us if we have lawmakers saying that public remarks are a criminal act. And so I just want to get really precise about what he did yesterday that you believe qualifies him for an impeachment trial.
He was undermining the investigation by siding with the foreign power that committed the crime over our own Justice Department after issuing those indictments. And as President of the United States, unlike you or me or anybody else, he's the head of this investigation. Technically, he's the president. He's in charge of the Justice Department. He's in charge of all of it.
No, we have an independent counsel, as you know,
who he has the right to fire.
If he fired him, you would impeach him for firing. I mean, why do you come on the show and play silly games with me?
I'm not playing silly games.
He's the head of the investigation. It's an independent counsel investigation. The whole point of it is
he has step after step after step attempted to undermine this investigation.
Okay, well, you're making me want to criticize my government even more because I believe it's my patriotic right.
It is your patriotic right.
Okay, but I'm worried you're going to accuse me of a crime, as you just did to another American citizen yesterday for disagreeing with you.
I did not accuse him of a crime for disagreeing with me. I accused him of a crime for trying to cover up what the Russians did. That's the bottom line.
I'm missing the distinction, and I think
also I said in my statement that we should see Mueller's investigation before we proceed with any of this.
I don't think people who believe that dissent is criminal should be entrusted with power. Do you?
I just said that I wanted to see Mueller's investigation before we go forward with this. I will say it was not well chosen, but I will absolutely say, I'm not the only one. I mean, George.
No, I know. That's why I'm so worried about this moment. I'm being told for the fifth time we're out of it. I'm aware. There are a lot of people who are saying dissent is a crime, and I, as the last civil libertarian in Washington,
it is not dissent. What is a crime is covering up and obstructing justice. Obstructing justice.
All right, now they're barking at me. I got to go. Congressman, thank you for explaining that. It's nice to see you.
I appreciate the chance. It's good to see you.
We apologize for the audio issues we had during that segment. Part 2 of our full extended interview with the president in Helsinki is after the break. Thanks. Now, the second half of our interview from Helsinki with the president. He had a lot to say about the Mueller indictments. Very interesting exchange on Angela Merkel, whether she or Vladimir Putin is a better leader for their people, and more. Here it is. You spoke with the Russian president about the hacking of the DNC servers. Those indictments were announced just a couple of days before you left on your European swing. What do you think of the timing of those indictments?
Well, I don't think of the timing as much as I think of other timing. Barack Obama was president. I wasn't president when this happened. Barack Obama was the president of the United States when all of this was when I was getting elected. So I was being elected, and I assumed this stuff all took place in that area or before. And he was president, and they informed him of it, and he did nothing. And then after I won, he thought Hillary was going to win. After I won, he said, oh, this is a big deal. Well, it wasn't a big deal as long as she won. So it's a disgrace. And frankly, it's a disgrace what's happening to our country.
Would it be possible for you to direct the Department of Justice, FBI, to take possession of the server and have, assuming no government investigator has looked at it, which seems to be the case right now, and get to the bottom of it?
So, as I've told you, and the answer is absolutely it is possible, and maybe At some point it'll be done. But I've wanted to stay out. My Department of Justice is the one branch, the one group that I'm very little involved in, same with the FBI. Am I disappointed that they're not looking at all of the crooked things taking place on the other side? Like the Pakistani man who left with these 3 servers, knew everything about Schultz, knew everything. Debbie Wasserman Schultz. And I think he had 3 servers. I believe they even have them, and they don't want to use them. Or the DNC, where the server was never taken by the FBI. They went in there, and Podesta or somebody threw him out of the office. They said, get out of here. And yet they go after other people like there's no tomorrow. So I have purposely, and you understand that, I spoke to you about it before, as they said, you're winning. Don't get involved, because I don't want to have people accuse me of anything. So I've stayed very much uninvolved. But am I allowed to be involved? Totally. Will I be involved? We'll have to see as it goes along. I mean, right now people are finding out a lot of things that they never thought. And in all fairness to the IG report, it was an unbelievable report, except at the end where they sort of tried to be politically correct. But when you talk about bias, there's never been bias like that. Now, Strzok, on the other hand, was, that was total bias. But that report was a good report, except for the basic conclusion.
So finally on Europe.
Which wasn't even bad.
Having met with, talked to, watched carefully Angela Merkel in Germany, Vladimir Putin in Russia, who do you think, from the perspective of their countries, does a better job representing the interest, again, of their countries?
So Angela was a superstar until she allowed millions of people to come into Germany. That really hurt her badly, as you know. She was unbeatable in any election. She allowed millions of people to come in, and when they came into Germany, they passed everywhere else, and they went to lots of other countries, although Hungary would not take any, and a lot of people wouldn't. But what happened is it was the Great Migration, and obviously it's hurt Angela very much. So I don't want to say who's better, who's not better, but I will say this. She's been very badly hurt by immigration, very, very badly hurt.
So China is a very rich country, as you often say. How many refugees and immigrants does China allow?
I'd say probably none.
Why is that?
I'd say, how about asking me about Japan? How about asking me about South Korea? How about asking me about a lot of other countries that are very successful?
Is there pressure on those countries to allow millions of refugees and immigrants to come in?
Pressure? I don't even think the people making the decision would want to waste the phone call. There's no chance. Check out Japan. Ask them, how many have you taken in the last 20 years? You can count them on your fingers. No, it's different. And
well, but wait, if the key to success as a country is immigration,
I don't say, well, look,
how can those countries
I'm
be
not
successful?
even talking about key to success, and it depends on what immigration, what's going on.
Right.
But you're asking me about China, and I added Japan, I added South Korea, I could add other countries also. It is virtually impossible. I'll tell you what, Mexico has very strong immigration laws. If Mexico wanted, they could stop this huge flow of people coming up from different parts of South America, including Mexico, and pouring into our border. Our laws are so bad. We have the worst laws anywhere in the world. We have the worst immigration laws in the world. We don't have any law. We have an opposite to law. And then on top of it, you have the right to separate children, okay? So everything's bad, but you have the right to separate children. It's really disgraceful that the Democrats aren't doing something about it, because we need their votes, as you know. So I hope we're going to get enough Republicans that we don't need them come November. But the Democrats, we need their votes. We have, as you know, 51. And even the 51 is not really there for obvious reasons in the Senate. And in the House, it's fairly close. We need Democrat votes in order to get it done. And they really just want to resist. The whole thing is resist, right? That's their big theme, resist. What do you get from resistance? But it's resist and obstruct. That's what they're all about. It's the only thing they're good about. They're not good politicians. They've got horrible policy, but they're very good at sticking together and resisting and obstructing. But that's hurting our country. But we'll get the immigration laws changed.
President of the United States, thank you for the conversation.
Thank you very much.
Well, your bettors on cable news have moved on just from bemoaning the hacking of the 2016 election to warning that the United States is vulnerable this year. The question is, why is nobody taking measures to fix it, like voter ID laws or the end of internet voting? We'll ask a member of Congress on that next. Well, it's an accepted article of faith among the many lemmings in Washington that Russia, quote, hacked our democracy. But now you're seeing pieces about how they could do it again in this year's midterm elections. In other words, if Democrats underperform, it's not their fault. Russia just foiled them again. So let's take this seriously for a minute. There are, in fact, countermeasures we could take to protect our democracy, and probably should, actually. We could require paper ballots. Those cannot be hacked, unlike electronic voting systems. We could require in-person voting for all but extreme cases. And, of course, we could and we would, if we really cared, demand robust voter ID laws and registration. So are Democrats ready to do this to stop Russia? Very simple question. Congressman Mark Pocan is a Democrat who represents Wisconsin. He joins us tonight. Congressman, thanks a lot for coming on. So how many Russians have been indicted for stealing the identity of an American and voting in our elections? Oh, let me just answer that. None. Mexican citizens have been. That's an actual hacking of our democracy. What are we doing to stop that?
So first of all, Tucker, I was PolitiFacted once by this. It's a national PolitiFact. It's more likely you'll be struck by lightning than commit in-person voter fraud. So for all the rhetoric that's out there and that you and others may want to say about it, the bottom line is
never
statistically,
happened? Is that what you're saying?
It's so rare that you're more likely to get hit by lightning. And that's been fact-checked.
Wait, stop. So you don't care? Is that what you're saying? You don't care
I'm telling you,
if someone...
Your scenario
the question is,
doesn't happen, Tucker.
No, it does happen, just in May.
It doesn't happen, Tucker.
Well, actually, you're not telling the truth, because in May, the state of Texas indicted someone for doing this. I am telling the truth.
You may want to believe something different. You may believe in unicorns and rainbows. But the bottom line is, this is PolitiFact fact-checking, saying you're more likely to get
I don't even know what PolitiFact is. This is a press release from the AG. Okay, slow down. The Attorney General of the state of Texas indicted someone just this May. Does that not bother you? Do you not care?
So you're giving me an anecdote of one person, and they're telling you that you're more likely to get struck by lightning. So I think 300 people.
So you don't care, actually. So all of this, and
what I'm telling you,
I'm trying to use profanity in the air. I'm going to use the abbreviation. It's BS. All this. Oh, they hacked our democracy. This actually happened, but you don't care because lightning happens more often, or something. What are you saying,
Tucker? I actually agree with you that we should have paper ballots, because when the Russians had this unprecedented attack on our elections, they were also going into election systems and companies that make these machines. So I think that's a great idea, and I agree with you, Tucker.
But wait a second. Why wouldn't you? But hold on. Why wouldn't you want to make sure that foreign citizens didn't vote in your elections? In many states,
we do make sure of that right now.
No, you don't.
Tucker, what I'm telling you, the statistics simply aren't true. You can say it all you want. You can hope and dream, but it's not a real statistic. Bottom line is, we don't.
You're not telling the truth, and you know that you are.
Read the newspaper.
It has happened. People have been indicted for it.
Look at PolitiFact, and they'll help you understand that it's simply not true.
What PolitiFact is, I'm telling you that there was an actual indictment just a couple months ago.
One person in a nation of 350 million people.
Oh, so it's not a big deal.
Got struck by lightning.
It's not a big deal.
You're just not factually correct, Tucker.
I get it. It's not a big deal. Okay, so it doesn't matter because you know we voted Democrat, so you don't care.
Tucker, you would rather talk about this than the fact
that because this
Robert
actually
Mueller just indicted 12 Russians, and when the president went to Russia, as he's playing footsie with Vladimir Putin, he not once asked for the extradition of the 12 people.
It's interesting.
This is ridiculous.
Your attitude is so cavalier that we're getting a window. Actually, I think you just blew yourself up, Congressman. You just revealed how little you care about the integrity of our voting. Because the guy was indicted and you're like, oh, PolitiFact, lightning, doesn't matter, who cares, Russia,
I'm giving you statistics and numbers versus your anecdotes. There's a big difference, Tucker. I understand. You want to make your case.
You just pulled the mask
problem
off.
Is the facts don't verify your case.
All right. There's a much bigger threat to our democracy than Russia. New momentum to abolish ICE. That's ahead.